All right. Hey there, folks. Even as book tour and conventions are reopening, I'm still bringing book tour to you. So welcome to Russ's Rockin' Rollercoaster Season 7, Intriguing Interviews with Creative Minds. Well, everyone here tonight and those watching at home are all Star Wars fans. And at long last, we're getting the chance to focus on everyone's favorite mysterious bounty hunter, Boba Fett. Now, some think the Book of Boba Fett delivered exactly what they wanted, while others felt it was a little bit let down, yet others feeling it fell somewhere in the middle. To figure this all out, on our panel tonight is Krasava Myers, an author, entertainment journalist, and chief editor of the Star Wars news website Scavengers Holocron. Welcome back, Krasava. All right, you're on mute.
Hi, yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Nice to be here. Nice to see you again.
All right. Also back on our show is Reverend Dr. Leah Schade, an assistant professor of preaching and worship at Lexington Theological Seminary in Lexington, Kentucky. An ordained minister in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, Leah is the author of 5 books, including the forthcoming volume co-authored with Jerry Sumney, Apocalypse When, A Guide to Interpreting and Preaching Apocalyptic Texts. Ooh, say that 3 times fast. She also has contributed chapters to 2 anthologies about the Blade Runner franchise, Less Human Than Human in Blade Runner 2049 and Philosophy, This Breaks the World, and Skin Jobs and Snow Jobs, Blade Runner 2049, and as Cli-Fi Noir and Race Erasure in Cyberpunk Nexus, exploring the Blade Runner universe. Welcome back, Leah.
Great to be back, Russ.
All
Thanks.
Right. Good to see you. All right, rounding out our panel is Zaki Hasan, professor of communication and media studies and member of the San Francisco Bay Area's Film Critics Circle. His reviews and analyses have appeared in venues such as the San Francisco Chronicle, IGN, and Philly Weekly, and he is co-host of the Movie Film Podcast. Zaki has also contributed to books on the Planet of the Apes, Blade Runner, and Star Wars franchises. Okay, a heads up to the folks at home. Feel free to send me notes or questions you have for the panel in the chat box during the show, and we'll get to a few at the end. All right, let's jump in. Now, before we do a deep dive into the storyline of the Book of Boba Fett, what is it about Boba Fett that had you lined up to watch in the first place? Leah.
Well, I wanted to see what they were going to do post-Mandalorian. And I have to say, I was hoping that the Mandalorian would make an appearance, and he did.
Which we will get to.
We will get to, right? And I was not disappointed. But the other reason is our family, we just watch it. I mean, whatever comes out, we're there. We're fans. We're loyalists.
All right, all good. Zaki.
Yeah, kind of the same what Leah said. You know, Star Wars shows have become family viewing for us, and yeah, you know, if it's got the Star Wars label on it, we make the time to watch for the live action stuff anyway. I must confess, you know, I don't mind Boba Fett, but I was never as sort of, you know, in love with the character as fans have been over the years, and I did feel like the Mandalorian sort of scratched the itch in terms of giving people what they sort of expected out of Boba Fett. So for me, the interest in the new show was, okay, well, how do you differentiate him? And it was an opportunity to spend more time with Temuera Morrison, who I absolutely adore and I think is terrific. And he's really made this interpretation of the character distinct from what we saw in the original trilogy.
That's right. And Krasava.
Gotta say it too. If it has the Star Wars name on it, I'm there. So, I mean, it was just, I went into it with like no expectations because we didn't really get to see much of Boba Fett in the original trilogy, and we didn't get to see that much of him in The Mandalorian. So we didn't really have any, you know, preconceived notions about what we could really expect from him. But I mean, I was just like Zaki, looking forward to seeing more of Temuera Morrison, but I was actually personally watching more for Ming-Na Wen to see what she would do with Fennec Shan, to see more of her story explored. So, I mean, they didn't really get into that too much, but I was, you know, every little bit of her that we got to see in the Book of Boba Fett, I loved.
All right. And so for the moment, we're going to focus only on the first half of the series. Mm-hmm. All right. And the storyline was split into 2 key threads. Boba Fett as he slowly rises to power, and Boba Fett's flashbacks. So we're going to take a look at those separately. All right. So we're going to spend some time here, and we're going to talk about his time with the Sand People. Now, in Star Wars, and we're talking A New Hope, the Sand People are introduced essentially as savage nomads with no sense of honor. But as we are introduced to them with Boba, we learn that the Sand People, at least this particular tribe, have their own culture and fierce commitment to each other. What did you think about how they presented them? And we'll start with Leah.
I think that's one of the strengths of the show. I was so impressed by the development of the character of the Tuscan Raiders, because for me, anthropologically speaking, it helps to deconstruct those terrible stereotypes about the natives, and to see their culture, to see that they in fact absolutely have a code of honor, and that that Boba Fett had to learn it, had to learn their language, and learned their mysterious connection with the earth, with the sand, how to survive. I gained enormous respect for the people because of this storyline, and that to me helped to correct some of the misconceptions that of course we're going to be thinking of because of the first episodes in the movies. But I really appreciated that about the series.
Zaki.
Yeah, I think it was a natural progression. I mean, it just stands to reason that the more time we spend with this race, right, we'll have an opportunity to get to know them as being more complex. And I mean, the original films themselves didn't portray them purely as evil, because when Anakin massacres a village, it's meant to be a bridge too far. It's meant to be a line that he crossed. We're meant to feel some degree of empathy for them in that situation. So I like that this is an outgrowth of that, and it totally recontextualizes for me that scene from A New Hope where Luke is on the ground and they're kind of waving their gaffy stick, where you're like, yeah, he's encroaching on their land. They're like, hey, stay in your zone. This is us. It completely shifts how you view that. I think in an interesting way. It adds texture to that.
It's interesting. Until you just said that, I hadn't really put the connection together. I guess I just didn't think of it that way. But you're absolutely right. Because when we see, A New Hope, when you see it for the first time, that's how we know them. You're like, oh, they are just a bunch of savages. They're just doing what they want. But if you go back, 30 years and realize that a Skywalker and a Jedi massacred their people, well, guess what? I'd be pissed off too.
Right.
I would be damn protective. And if you were like coming through my land, and if anything, in that context, we might actually conclude that they were generous towards Luke compared to what not that they necessarily knew it was his dad, but what his dad did to them. I mean, he basically got treated with kid gloves compared to what his dad did to them.
Right.
Right. Wow. It's great. I don't know why I never put two and two together, but you're absolutely right. It was the Jedi or the Skywalkers were the true aggressors. That's right. I never thought of it that way. All right. So Krasava, what did you think about, the culture of the Tuscan Raiders as we saw them here?
Well, I'm not sure if you're all aware of this, but recent Oscar winner Troy Kotsur, who was recently in the Academy Award-winning film Coda, he actually invented the Tuscan Sign Language back in The Mandalorian. He was one of the first stuff actors to appear in Star Wars. He, in episode 4, I believe, was the first he was one of the Tuscan Raiders that engaged with the Mandalorian and he was the one conversing in sign language. So when he was creating the sign language that the Tuscan Raiders use, he wanted to make sure that it was not like ASL. He didn't want to be anything like American Sign Language, because he really wanted it to be more representative of their culture and thinking about what they go through in their day-to-day lives. There's not a lot of water on that planet. So what would their sign for water be if it's not something that they have regular access to? Things like that.
Right. Oh, that's
fascinating.
wow, I didn't
Yeah.
know that. But I did sort of appreciate that. I mean, I did, I guess back when I was a kid in elementary school, we did they taught us some sign language, and I remember some of the letters and whatnot. And I was sort of interested in it for a while, but clearly it's part of your life. But I did recognize that some of their motions, they were not, I could tell they were not the same as what, we might use, but the system was, as it was, the, maybe the specific language was a little bit different, but you can see that the motions that they were doing were very clear. I liked how they were very clear, right? It wasn't sort of like a lot of hand waving and kind of to sort of gesticulate a sense of language. It was very clear, sharp, specific movements, but it wasn't but their movements weren't violent either, right? There was a purpose to each motion to really kind of symbolize what they were doing. And I thought that was real clever, but that's some great background. So thank you for that. That's great. All right. So Boba Fett learns to not only respect the Sand People, but adopts now. And again, this is, as we knew Boba Fett up until that point, right? He's a bounty hunter. He's muscle for hire. Right. We also know a little bit, if you've watched some of the other shows, more about what the Mandalorians were and how their culture got fractured. But to see this character, and after what he had been through, right, he in Jedi, and he's in the Sarlacc pit and blah, blah, blah. And then he winds up with these Tuscan Raiders, for him to really sort of, I think his missing armor, in a way, it's sort of like the idea of shedding my skin, right? That was, he shed that former self, let that go, and really, he wasn't just sort of going along to survive. I mean, ultimately to survive. And he wasn't just sort of well, I'll hang out for a while and see how it goes. In that scene where he had the little creature went up his nose and he tripped out. That was really that was his, it was like baptism by gecko, right? Right, and they wrapped him in the scarves, and that was sort of their moment of saying, we're welcoming you as one of us, right, into the tribe. What was your there's a lot going on there. So Leah, so in particular, someone who religious studies is your life. Talk to us a little bit about kind of the symbolism there and what you think it means for a man like Boba Fett to, for a while anyway, really become a Tuscan Raider.
Yeah, I actually, I think that the term baptism is exactly the one to use. It is an initiation rite.
Right.
And the fact that he, the branch, the tree, there's some great religious symbolism there. Tree of life, tree of
Right.
knowledge, and that he is deemed worthy to receive this, and then learns how to turn this into the instrument that will ultimately save his life. I think is very powerful. Again, I want to point out that there is implicit in this is, I think, trying to help us, especially those who are in Western culture, to more deeply appreciate these savage customs, to recognize that they are deeply meaningful, deeply powerful, and connected to the world around them in ways that we just have no access to. So the fact that the character of Boba Fett gives us an entree into this world is really a gift. And I think it translates to our own cultures, our own society, to say, look, the people that you want to denigrate, that you want to look down on, they have so much more connection to the mysteries of life than you can even imagine. And so I think metaphorically helps us to reframe our own thinking.
That's right. Zaki, what about you?
Yeah, what's so great about it, I think it's as a vehicle of reframing who Boba Fett is. And as I alluded to earlier, I think that was really an essential part of this series, was to differentiate him from Din Djarin. And I find it really, exciting that he's a character who's like, no, I don't want to kill anymore. I don't want to, I don't want to pursue that violent path. And the fact that it's the Sand People who put him on a non-violent path is itself very interesting and a nice contrast with what we were talking
That's
about
actually,
earlier.
that's really interesting. It's funny, again, this is, you're saying it now, and you're right. The way we had these, probably collectively had this, preconceived notions. All right, the Tuscan Raiders are just these sort of, savage, these sand people. That's all they're sand people, right? They don't even call them, for the most part, Tuscan Raiders. They don't refer to them with any kind of respect or regard, right? They're like, these dirty creatures who are just, violent, and they just do what they do. And they have their language is, a lot of grunting and shouting, right? Not a language that to our ear, we might consider to have poetry or beauty to it. And this violent man learns from these so-called savages to become a more peaceful, I don't know if it's a peaceful warrior or a peaceful, just a more peaceful being. And it was funny, I was thinking about it, because I rewatched the whole series over the last couple of days, and I forget, there was one scene early in the show where maybe it was the kid, I can't remember, and they were sitting in, I don't know, it was the middle of the day, and he was just like sitting in the sand, like, I don't know, like he was futzing with something. And I remember thinking like, wow, I guess that's what you do, like when you don't have TV, right? When you can't stream Netflix, right? When there's nothing.
Wordle.
Right. There's no Wordle. That's right. There's no Wordle. There's no apps to fart around your phone. All you do all day long, you have no options but to commune with your physical and then spiritual environment. And I guess if that's your culture, all those sort of material trappings, they're just not part of your thinking. They're not part of your emotional or psychological makeup. They just don't exist. So all you do is, the physical sand, you touch that sand, you feel the sun on you, right? And that's what it took to sort of, these savages, to the savage people almost washed the savagery out of the real savage.
Ooh.
Right? So
Well
sort of
said.
oh, there you go. I see every once in a while I have
All
something.
right.
There you go. All right. Score one for the Russ man. Okay. Now, speaking of savage. Okay. So the train heist was, to me, one of the most exciting sequences in the entire series. And the train heist seems to be a theme kind of now within the Star Wars, especially over the last couple of years. Train heists are a big thing now. What did you think about that whole sequence? Zaki, let's continue with you.
Oh, it's great. I mean, it's yet another thread connecting Star Wars, the universe, the franchise, to the tradition of westerns,
right?
Which there was a kinetic energy to it, and what's interesting is some of the discussions that I saw surrounding that episode in particular was like, oh, Boba Fett comes in as sort of a savior figure, and I heard somebody say, oh, he's a white savior, and I was like, but he's not white, like
not white. No.
And what I vehemently disagree with that, because I'm like, no, this is like it's this cultural overlap, and both are learning from each other. And to me, I mean, again, I said this before, I was never a big fan of Boba Fett until he was brought back in The Mandalorian, because he just gained so much more texture to me. So this is part of that trajectory for me.
That's right. And the character himself, I mean, originally, he was genetically bred to be a warrior.
Right.
I mean, he talk about, this is not a person who started out with having agency over his path. It was decided from day one. We brought you into this life to do one thing: attack. That's why you exist, right? So this is, any ideas that this person could be a person of privilege, which is a whole other thing, which I don't want to get into right now, because that's a different discussion. He was never a person of privilege, like, ever.
Right.
So I talk to me again a little bit. What about the train heist? Krasava, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it was a pretty fun scene overall. Like, I feel like overall this sort of tempo was a bit slow in the first early scenes, because like if you watch it for the first like 10 minutes of the premiere, we don't have really any dialogue at all when he's coming out of that Sarlacc pit. There's just a lot of silence. And I think it's really cool how much they're able to convey just using action scenes and movement and just that sort of energy and tone to the series without using any dialogue. I mean, the later episodes, once they get into the pikes and the whole like fighting for control over the area, then there's a lot more dialogue heavy. But again, because of my background in deaf culture, like I really pay attention to what they don't say and what they say just using silence. And so I feel like using that whole train heist scene to show the collaborative efforts of them working together like so harmoniously, it really does, as Zaki said, shows the two cultures blending together and learning from each other.
Yeah, I love that idea of, expressing it's what they don't say could be so much more informative sometimes than what they do say. So I want to keep going on this, but I put a little thought into this, and Leah, I want to go with you here. So when Boba discovers that the Tuscan Raiders have been wiped out, it clearly takes a toll on him. I mean, this is not just like, oh well, that sucks. I mean, this wounds him deeply. Yet he pushes past it. And I haven't decided really. I wanted to see him feel a deeper, express in a more overt way, a deeper sense of loss and pain. How do you think that their, extinction, their assassination, I mean, and they were really treated horribly. How do you think it impacted him going forward, or does it? Because you could argue pretty strongly that it was his attack on the train, which he orchestrated, that led to the death of the Tuscan Raiders. I mean, he really, I mean, not for nothing, but he kind of started some shit.
Yeah, he did. Well, so let's pick up some threads here. So yet another time that a tribe has been massacred. So, there's that repetition of so anybody who's familiar with it's like, oh wow, this happens to them a lot. And so the savagery, as you had said, it's really misplaced.
Right.
So so here we go again. And absolutely the feeling of regret and grief, I would have liked to have seen that dealt with cinematically a little more in depth. I guess in my mind, I'm thinking, they're showing the scenes of him as a boy watching his father leave, and he's always pushed to just move on. Right. The next thing. And so that's his training. That's true.
You're right.
At the same time, I think the fact that, especially, the last episode just brings it, when he, defends himself with, what's the stick called?
The stick.
The stick, yeah. That was such a moment of satisfaction because he carried with him the spirit of what they imbued. And so you had to wait a long time for that payoff.
Yeah, it was.
But it was really worth it at the end. It was deeply satisfying for me as a viewer to see that.
Zaki, what did you think?
Yeah, just I was thinking about exactly that with the gaffy stick. That he's never let that go. And then my mind goes to that shot in episode 2 when he's holding his father's helmet. He's known loss from a very young age.
That's true.
And so you can imagine that it has hardened him, right? So he carries that grief, but it manifests not as rage, but as focus.
Yes.
So he's probably developed so many emotional calluses, just being once through, that maybe he can power through it. Okay, so let's move ahead to in the present storyline. Boba Fett with Shennik Fand and as his number 2 set out to take control of Mos Espa. But what do we learn about these characters and their expectations about rising to power? Krasava.
I think it's really interesting because I don't really know if he wants to be a leader, honestly. I feel like he wants peace. Like after what he saw with his whole new family being destroyed, he doesn't want to see that happen ever again. He doesn't want anyone to be in pain. Like I think he wants just things to be okay. He doesn't want there to be all this fighting and war, and he sort of sees that he needs to cause some violence in order to restore peace again.
Zaki?
Yeah, it's so funny because I totally agree that he seems kind of wishy-washy on it. I think it's the reason he decides to come in is he sees the void, and he's kind of like, somebody's going to fill this void, it might as well be me. But he hasn't figured out what he wants to do with that. But I think I don't think he comes in with the intention of being a kinder, gentler Don, so to speak. I think that's a realization that comes to him gradually, where he's like, the way that they were doing it, the way Jabba did it, I can't do that. It's not going to work that way. I have to find something new. And so that what we really see is his journey towards that realization, which kind of culminates in the final couple episodes.
Leah?
I think what fascinated me about his sort of process of self-discovery is that he's really constructing his own identity for the first time. Up until this point, as we've already said, he's been trained, he's been programmed, he's been bred to be a certain kind of person. And he's just now shedding that. So he was in a very liminal stage when he was with the Tuscans, and now coming out of that, having to reconstruct his identity in this new role. And one critique I heard frequently is that there's a reason why Mandalorians don't take off the mask. Like he should never have had to take off his mask. It takes away the mystery and all of that. But that's the whole point. He's leaving that behind. We're seeing the person develop, and it's not always pretty, and it's not always coherent, and it's not always consistent. But little by little, he's feeling his way. He's building himself as he goes. And I think by the end, we get a really good sense of who that person is. And I would look forward to seeing what comes next.
It's funny. When I saw it the first time, I have to admit, I was pretty disappointed in the way that, because he says to Fennec Shand, he's like, why are we working for all these idiots who don't know what they're doing and are probably just going to get us killed? We're smarter than them. He said those words, but his strategic actions did not demonstrate that. He made one misstep after another. He did not have a good lay of the land. He really didn't understand the depth of the political landscape. And I thought, I don't know. But when I watch it the second time, and here's what I just can't tell if the writers kind of said, well, we had a great time getting him there. Now we don't really know what to do with him going forward, or if it was intentional. And they said, you know what? He is not that guy anymore. He thought he could be, but he really isn't. And because his instincts say, all right, go be the badass, go kick ass and take names, and no one fucks with Boba Fett, because it's muscle memory. But spiritually, he ain't there anymore. And so he kind of fucks up a lot, not because he's not smart and skilled, but because that other self is gone. Now, I don't really know which one it is, and I guess we'll see in future seasons, but that was kind of how it struck me. Now, all right, so let's get into some other stuff here. So in the second half of the series, we see the return of Grogu, Luke, and the Mandalorian. What was and it's sort of almost like a carve out unto itself. What was your take when you see, so when the Mandalorian shows up in that one episode, you're like, okay, there was no hint. They didn't hint about it. He just opening frame, there he is. And the whole episode was basically about him. What did you think about that? Zaki, go with it.
Well, it's at this point he has sort of become a beloved character, so it's nice to just, oh yeah, here's what he's been up to. I do feel in hindsight that uh, personally I would have preferred to weave both stories together throughout the season, and rather than carve out an entire episode where we just shift away from Boba Fett, draw the focus away, make Boba seem less important, have both stories playing uh, uh, cross-cutting. And if that means it's Mandalorian season 3 or whatever, that's fine. I wouldn't mind that. But I feel like that would have been my preference, because it felt very arbitrary. It felt nice, but it felt, to me, I was like, this is Boba Fett's show. He's not even in this episode.
Right.
That was my thought.
I thought it was a great episode, just a great Star Wars episode by itself.
Right.
If you take it out of context.
That's
but
right.
within Boba Fett, it almost felt like it was just sort of, even though it was great and really fabulously well done, it just felt a bit jarring. Leah, what was your take on it?
Yeah, I was at once elated. I was so happy to see him because I was hoping he would make an appearance. And at the same time, I was like, so do they think that this show is not strong enough that they got to bring Mandalorian in to rescue it halfway through?
Yeah.
Like, what's that about? I agree, Zaki. I think it would have been much more stylistically and narratively cohesive if they could have braided it together throughout. I don't know. I mean, you couldn't really call it the Book of Boba Fett then. You'd have to call it, I don't know what you would call it, but it did feel very jarring. I mean, it all comes together nicely at the end, but boy, we had to take a real detour to come back, and they had to do some serious fancy footwork to try to weave it all together
That's
in the end.
Yeah. So Krasava, so along that thread, and Zaki and Leah said it well, and I think I felt the same way. A lot of people felt the same way, that intentional, not intentional, but having the Mandalorian have such a strong presence when he came in, and being, he is at the height of his powers. I mean, the Mandalorian is a guy, if you need someone to rescue you or fuck some shit up, that's the guy you actually call, which kind of made Boba Fett kind of seem like, Mandalorian light in a way. How did you feel about it? Were you, was it like, I don't care, Mando's back, I don't give him me all day, or I don't know, what was your take on it?
Well, just to backtrack a little bit, I think one of the reasons why episode 5 was so strong was because it was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, I believe. And she has a very long history with the Star Wars franchise. She went to summer camp with Natalie Portman. Her dad is Ron Howard. So, she grew up playing with Star Wars toys before she even knew what Star Wars was. So I think her just experience with the franchise really, helped to make that episode so strong and helped sort of cushion the blow for his return. So it didn't feel so jarring that, oh, we're watching the Book of Boba Fett, but the Mandalorian is here, just because of everything that's happening on screen is so compelling. That being said, I feel like the Book of Boba Fett, I think around episode 5, it took a turn where you really kind of begin to realize that the Book of Boba Fett is sort of just a setup for the Mandalorian season 3. That, like you said, I don't think it was necessarily writer incompetence, but they knew that Boba Fett had to, get set up as the daimyo of Tatooine by the time Mandalorian season 3 rolls around. And they needed all these characters and all these strategic positions. They needed Grogu to go away and make his choice and then go back to Din Djarin before season 3 started. So I feel like Book of Boba Fett, I feel like Boba Fett sort of got the short end of the stick, that, the flashback started strong, but then it went downhill and basically became the Mandalorian 2.5.
All right, so just a quick interlude for the folks who came in a little late. If you have any questions or comments for the panel, send them in the chat box and we'll get to a few at the end. All right, so let's go spend a little time with Grogu.
Yes, please.
Yes. So the Mandalorian goes off. because and what's interesting, I think, and actually it's funny, yet again I'm having an aha moment as we're talking about this now, is that when the Mandalorian is challenged by Piz Vazla for the dark saber, and the Mandalorian ultimately wins, but he confesses that once he took off his helmet, which, I mean, wow, I mean, talk about a strict code of honor. Whoa. And he has to, there's only one way to redeem himself. But what's interesting, again, now I'm thinking about it, is that, let's think about that, this code of honor. Who also had the code of honor? It was the Tuscan Raiders, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like codes of honor seem to be kind of like it's thematic in here. Like some people have a very strong code of honor. Some people in some cultures do, and others, sort of less so. So Mando, he goes off, and we don't know this until later, but he has the staff reforged into this little protective armor for Grogu. But when he gets down to the planet, and he's like, what's up, and he never gets that, he doesn't get a chance to see Grogu. Talk to me about your emotional either connection or not to the situation wherein it's clear that Mandalorian and Grogu, they have a very strong bond, but at least up at that moment they can't effectuate it. Talk to me about what was that like for you, Zaki?
I mean, it was very poignant. The thought I had was I kind of wish they would have stretched that out a little bit in terms of the heartbreak of the end of Mandalorian season 2. It feels like the people behind the show were kind of like, oh, we got to get these two back together. That's what people want. And so they very quickly tried to undo that. And I feel like their reunion should have been in The Mandalorian. It should have been in his own show.
Right.
But that, I mean, again, that's not how the show's been constructed. Even the creative said they consider this sort of Mandalorian season 2.5. So I guess we just go with that. But I think the idea that Din Djarin goes to see Grogu and he's sent away, I think I would have liked that to not pay off until later, to not have to the question of Grogu's choice being something that stretches past the end of this show, to hold that a little longer.
Leah?
I just need to talk about the false choice.
Right.
I'll see. You're skipping it. That's my next question. No, that's okay. So let's just, we're there. So let's just dive in.
All right. I did not like that false choice that Luke gives, and I wonder if that's one of the reasons why later on we know that, Luke fails. He fails. And, we had debates about episode, what was it? 10? Wait a minute. No.
We did The Last Jedi.
Last Jedi, right? And we talked about that the good and the bad of that movie, but the despair that he obviously felt. I mean, to me, that scene plants the seed of this is why, because you can't make a child choose like this. It is not all or nothing. And what is I mean,
yes.
That was a terrible thing. And the Mandalorian says, our way is loyalty and connection. And the Jedi is just the opposite. Like, you have to be this independent, not connected, no emotional connection to anything or anybody. Like, that's the purity. And okay, Jedi are great and they're wonderful and they save the universe, but there's something really flawed in that, I think.
I mean, I agree. I thought it was a pretty, really a really rough choice to put in front of him. But what one nuance that I did pick out was that what I thought that Luke said was that either you can stay with me and I'll train you to be a great Jedi, or you go, with the Mandalorian. But if you stay with me, you'll never see him again. What he actually said was, you may never see him again. It's because the time is different for you, because you're going to live to be so long. A long time for you, a short time for you is a long time for them. So it wasn't exactly 100% of, if you're with me, you'll never see him again. It's, you probably won't, but not that you can't. That's just that one little nuance that I did pick up on when I just watched it again. Not that that makes the choice, it's still a horrible choice, but there was sort of a sliver of, you might see him, not that you can't. I don't know if that makes any difference to you at all.
But there's this beautiful chainmail onesie.
Oh my God! You go that,
and this like
right.
ugly looking lightsaber. Like,
right.
what do you think this kid's gonna choose?
The Mandalorian was essentially his dad or step.
Yes,
right?
of course.
And
of course.
Who broke his heart to be split up from him in the first place?
Right, and he's trying to do the right thing. The Mandalorian, Din Djarin did the right thing. That was the honorable thing to do, and Grogu made the right choice. And so, okay, eventually we're going to talk about the reunion scene, but oh my gosh, okay, but let's not jump the gun there.
Okay. Any other thoughts on the Sophie's choice here?
Go ahead, Krasava. I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay, well, okay, so I feel like most people watching along at home, obviously I can't speak for everyone, but I just feel like most people watching weren't really, like, it wasn't really a choice. Like, season 3 of The Mandalorian is going to happen. How is it going to happen without Grogu? Like, they were getting back together. It's like when you're watching a rom-com and the couple breaks up at the beginning. Like, they're just going to end up back together anyway.
That's
so
right.
It's like, you can't really develop that, like, personal gut-wrenching, like, oh, what's he going to do connection to it, because you know what he's going to do. So, yeah.
Luke's kind of comes off kind of bad there, though.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. It's his descent to the dark side. This is
There
how
you
we
go.
arrive at the Last Jedi, Luke.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yep.
Well, and I like that. I like that bit of context, right? Because we have the benefit of knowing where things are headed, to be like, oh, Luke, come on, man, don't do this. Like,
right?
you're making the same mistake. That's
yep.
what and yet he's got the arrogance of youth, right? And it's to me, when you contrast Luke in this with where you see the Jedi Temple being built, and then you go to the flashbacks that we see in The Last Jedi where he sees the wreckage. I mean, he's seeing his own hubris. I really plug into the tragedy of that as
That's
something very it's poignant.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so one of my favorite surprises of the Book of Boba Fett was the return of Cad Bane, an amazing villain from the Clone Wars. Zaki, how'd you feel about how they handled that?
I as somebody who has really enjoyed the Clone Wars, I've especially enjoyed the ways they've gradually pulled the threads tighter between the animated section of the galaxy and the live action stuff. And obviously that's the Dave Filoni element. But what was so cool was, at least for me, like seeing the live action version of Cad Bane, it was like a perfect adaptation of like the cartoon. You know what I mean? They changed it just enough where if you could be like, you could look at the cartoon version and be like, yeah, that's a good adaptation of the live action. Like if that had come first.
Right, that's right. Was it the same voice actor?
Same voice actor, Corey Burton. Yeah.
Great. Oh, loved them. Krasava, what'd you think?
I loved it. Cad Bane is my favorite bounty hunter ever, hands down. Like, sorry, that's a hot take right there, but no, I like screamed at my screen when I saw him. I was like, it's Cad Bane, he's back. Like, I was just like so excited. Like, it would have been so much better if he had been in more episodes. Like, if they just stretched that out, if they like you said, if they had woven in Mandalorian from the beginning and threaded those through, we should have seen Cad Bane more from the beginning and then threaded that through. That would have been awesome.
That was my one big beef. And Leah, I don't know if you'd watched the Clone Wars or not. But the fact introducing Cad Bane, amazing. But the fact that he kind of came and went too fast.
It was wasted.
So wasted.
Yeah, you know, like this is quintessential villain, and we lose him. We get him for 2 episodes, and then I mean, the way he goes is again fantastic. But that it was really it just felt like they tried to fit so much into just 7 episodes. And they, you know, this is the great thing about a series. It's not a movie. You don't have to pack it all in.
You can take your time.
This could have been 2 separate series easily. 2, you know.
I'd watch a Cad Bane series all day long. All day long. All right, so we're getting towards the end. So the final episode was pretty much an hour-long action sequence. How'd you feel about how they handled it? And we'll start with Krasava.
Like, I wish it was longer. Like, I feel like everything got wrapped up too fast. Like, I felt like we were all of a sudden in some hurry to race to the finish line and like wrap things up so Mando could get on his way. I feel like everything just ended too fast. And I feel like it was funny, but that I forget who said it, or I think Boba wanted to have the battle at Jabba's palace, and then I think it was the Power Rangers that wanted to do it in the city. But he was concerned about causing all the destruction to the city, and then he rides in on the Rancor that proceeds to just like demolish buildings and knock everything up. I'm like, I don't know how anyone's gonna expect, you know, Boba, like, who's gonna like follow Boba now? Because he just destroyed everything. Like, oh yeah, look at this guy. He's the one who just destroyed everything with his Rancor. I was like,
yeah. Zaki?
I concur. Yeah, for me it was the fact that the wrap up was so it felt very abrupt. Like we're racing towards an allotted number of episodes. I think I would have preferred a slightly smaller scale spread out over another episode or 2 to feel a little bit more.
Leah?
Yeah, if I was breathless. It definitely could have been stretched into 2 episodes at least. Really, the whole series really should have been 10. It should have been 10, and 7 was way too much to try to pack in. I also, and because it was so rushed, if some of it just felt a little unrealistic. Like, I know we got to do the David and Goliath, you know, the small band up against the big monsters. Like, it felt a little cliche to me because you know how it's going to end to a certain extent, and everybody has to get their sort of moment in the sun. But it just, I mean, other than the reunion scene and of course Grogu calming, putting the Rancor into into sleep mode, which was adorable. It was like very dizzying.
I have to admit, it was probably my least favorite episode of the series. To me, and maybe it's the John Favreau, who was part of the Marvel universe. It was basically like the Avengers again, just like smashed for an hour.
Yeah, that's a great comparison.
And I personally, that's just me. It's my least kind of favorite action of all, when it's just loud and smashing, destroying buildings, and it's like, oh, well, too bad if everyone around you gets destroyed in the process. It's just spectacle. But I did love the Cad Bane scene, was amazing, but the rest of it, all right. So we're out of time. One final question. What's your final takeaway about season 1 of the Book of Boba Fett? Yay, nay, or somewhere in the middle? Zaki?
I liked it, but I didn't love it. The stuff that I liked was primarily the journey of the character. I think what I said earlier, it felt a little undercooked, and I think it would have worked better as a running subplot in Mandalorian season 3 rather than giving it a series of its own.
All right, Krasava.
I'm a big fan of Troy Kotsur. I'm a big fan of what he did for the Tuscan Raiders. I'm a big fan of what the show did and, helping to get rid of the whole preconceived notion that they're just savages. And it showed that they have their own culture that I'd love to see going forward in other, Star Wars franchises, but TV shows, movies, whatever they decide to do. I think overall, though, my one closing thought is I wonder what's going to happen for people who decided to watch The Mandalorian season 1, 2, skip Boba Fett, and then tune back in for 3. Because if you didn't watch the Book of Boba Fett, you're missing a lot.
All right, Leah.
I liked it. I tried to appreciate each episode for what it was, and as much as I critique it, I still feel like yes, it did what it needed to do. One thing that we didn't get to talk about, which I hope that they will develop in the future, is
Fennec Shand, yeah.
Fennec Shand, sorry.
Yes.
Ming-Na Wen's character. I need to see more development of a female anti-hero.
Yep.
And we've got Rey. That's wonderful, but we need more Ming-Na Wen, and I hope that in the future we get to see as much character development for her as an anti-hero as we did for Rey.
I agree. I thought she was great, but they just didn't give her enough to do. Personally, I was actually absolutely enthralled with all of the flashback scenes. I was just riveted to the screen. The rest of it, I was a little up and down, but it was still fun. Okay, but we're really out of time. So it's a special time on the show where we spin the wheel. And on the wheel are seven possible categories, which I created just for this show. And the categories are Punch It Chewie, Jedi Powers, Attack of the Clones, Mod Me Up, That's a Good Rancor, This Is the Way, and the Sarlacc Pit. All right, Krasava, you're up first. You ready?
Oh, again, I'm always first.
Oh, well, there you go. And you got Jedi Powers. Okay, what do we got here? If you woke up one day and discovered you had Force powers, be honest, would you use it all for good, or would you find a few choice individuals and take care of business?
I take care of business, hands down.
Okay, you know what? Dark side, good side.
I am a Sith at heart, and I have no problem admitting that. I feel an absolute every time.
I love it. All right. Zaki, you're up next. All right, what do we got? Round and round, no whammies, and this is the way. All right, so what do I even say here? Okay, the Mandalorians live by a strict code. Mando adheres to it religiously. Boba Fett does not. And yet they've both ended up in the same place, at least for now, in terms of the show. If the two characters were to switch credos, which one do you think would adapt best to their new way of life?
I think Din Djarin would. He would adapt to Boba Fett's credo. Right. I think he would, because I think Boba Fett has moved past the bounty hunter life, whereas Din Djarin has already demonstrated that he's an empathetic person who's I think that's the reason that he is willing to ally with Boba Fett.
Right. All right. Very good. All right, Leah, here we go.
All right.
Come on, no whammies. Round and round. All right, and for you, we got no duplications, and here we go. That's a good Rancor. Okay, so first introduced in Return of the Jedi and then revisited in the Book of Boba Fett, we learned that Rancors are actually very loving, docile creatures, but they go kind of Hulk smash if they're provoked. If you could have a pet Rancor, would you?
No, I wouldn't have the room, and I wouldn't have the budget to feed it.
Okay, all right. I hope. Okay, that was fun, but I hope you're ready to get real, because I'm going to give you all some truth serum. All right, Zaki, and I'm starting with you. I'm going to ask you 10 Star Wars questions. Answer quickly. You ready?
Okay.
Okay. First Star Wars movie you saw on the big screen?
Episode 4, special edition.
Okay. Favorite Star Wars movie or TV show?
Empire Strikes Back.
Least favorite?
Attack of the Clones.
Favorite Star Wars character?
Han Solo.
Prequel movies, yay or nay?
It used to be nay, now it's yay.
Used to be nay, now it's yay. Okay.
Yeah.
Sequel movies, yay or nay?
Yay.
Yay. Okay. If you could join any crew in the Star Wars universe, which would it be?
Millennium Falcon.
Best Star Wars relationship?
Han and Leia.
Most underserved Star Wars character you'd like to see get an expanded storyline?
Finn.
Scariest Star Wars villain?
Palpatine.
Most impactful Star Wars moment?
When Luke finds out Vader's the father.
All right, very good. All right, Krasava, you're up next. You ready?
This is terrifying, but yes.
Okay, first Star Wars movie you saw on the big screen.
Rogue One.
Wow.
Star Wars, a favorite Star Wars movie or TV show?
See, he was so rapid fire. It put a lot of stress on me. I'm like, Revenge of the Sith.
Okay, least favorite.
Last Jedi.
Favorite Star Wars character?
Ooh. Chewbacca.
Awesome. Prequel movies, yay or nay?
Yay.
Sequel movies, yay or nay?
Force Awakens, yay. The other two, nay.
Okay. If you could join any crew in the Star Wars universe, which would it be?
Ghost.
Which one?
The Ghost Crew.
Oh, the Ghost Crew. Very good. Ooh, good one. I like that. All right. Best Star Wars relationship?
Han and Leia.
Most underserved Star Wars character you'd like to see get an expanded storyline?
Because we were just talking about him. Cad Bane.
All right. Scariest Star Wars villain?
Palpatine.
And most impactful Star Wars moment?
Honestly, to me, it's when Finn lights up the lightsaber in The Force Awakens for the first time, because I feel like that really inspired like a lot of hope.
All right. Right on. Okay. Leah, your turn.
All right.
All right. First Star Wars movie you saw on the big screen?
It was A New Hope at a drive-in with my parents, and I had to wear pajamas because I was so young and it was at night and my parents knew I would fall asleep. Okay.
All right. Favorite Star Wars movie or TV show?
Empire Strikes Back.
Least favorite?
Episode 1.
Favorite Star Wars character?
Han Solo.
Prequel movies, yay or nay?
1 and 2, nay. 3, yay.
Okay. If you could join any crew in the Star Wars universe, which would it be?
Maybe Rogue One.
Ooh, interesting. I like that. All right. Best Star Wars relationship?
Han and Leia.
Mm-hmm.
But
But
Din Djarin and Grogu.
Ooh.
Really close.
Oh, neck and neck.
Really close.
They're neck and neck.
Neck and neck.
All right. Most underserved Star Wars character you'd like to see get an expanded storyline?
Just said Fennec Shan.
All right. Scary Star Wars villain?
Palpatine. Yeah.
All right. Okay. And finally, most impactful Star Wars moment?
I know. I love you.
I know.
I know.
That's a good one. It's a classic. All right. We only have a minute or two, so we're going to take a question from the audience. Okay. This is for anyone who wants to offer. What was the biggest surprise to you in the Book of Boba Fett?
I was surprised by how good the Luke CGI looked. They really improved it since the end of The Mandalorian.
Okay. Anyone else?
I was surprised to see the Mandalorian pop up, honestly. I wasn't sure if he would, pop up, but yep, they threw him in there and he kind of took over.
Sure did.
I was shocked when the Wookiee attacked Boba Fett in his Bacta tank. I totally did not see that coming, and that was terrifying to me.
Was actually that was one. I have to admit, there was one moment of that one scene that bugged me. Is that I forgot his name, the big Wookiee. He had
Black Chrysanthemum.
right. He
That's
had
it.
right. He had Boba. You picked him up and you heard his bones crunch.
I know, right?
And then
Yeah.
like 2 minutes later, Boba Fett's back and kicking ass. So
Yeah.
either they should have just sort of like, not had the bone crunching or not have him fuck him up so much, or, that just didn't really play that well,
Yeah.
I didn't think. But in any
Yeah.
case, okay. I want to thank everyone. This has been a great hour. So before we wrap up, I got a couple things to share. I'm just going to share my screen real quick, and then we're going to call it a day. All right. So, Krasava, what do we got here? Tell us about what you're up to.
I am the co-founder and editor-in-chief of the Star Wars website, Scavengers Holocron. And that is the homepage there, scavengersholocron.com.
All right, very good. So, what do you write? You write about anything and everything Star Wars, or do you have a theme, or?
Yeah, anything and everything Star Wars. I think I also sent you the screenshot that I don't see on your little list there for, it's fine, you can just leave it on that one. For The Blast, I also write for The Blast Entertainment News, which you can just access at theblast.com. It's everything and anything celebrity news. I write exclusives for, I've written exclusives about Drake, about Justin Bieber. I was actually supposed to write an exclusive about Tyga, but I decided to be here tonight.
All right, there you go. Good choice.
And if you want to check out my articles on The Blast, one quick way to get there is to go to Kanye West's public Facebook page, and my article is right at the top.
That's where I spend all my time. All right. Okay, Leah, what do we got?
Preaching and worship is my day job, but the real fun, cool stuff is doing things like this with you, Russ, and writing about sci-fi from a socio-religious perspective. And that's what I did for Blade Runner. These are the 2 books that I have chapters in. The books themselves are really awesome. So if you're into Blade Runner, these are the books to get.
Yes, very good. All right. So Zaki, he doesn't have anything to share. He just writes about movies and TV shows and all sorts of cool stuff. So make sure you look for his reviews. And as for me, since anyone who's watching here is a fan of space opera with action, humor, and suspense, I'll encourage you to check out my novel Crossline, about a modern day space pilot thrust into a parallel Earth caught between rebellion, Armageddon, and a desperate fight to get home. Crossline is available on Amazon and published by Crazy 8 Press. And if you want a signed copy, you can order them directly from me.
Are you turning it into an audiobook?
I am hopefully going to get there.
Cool.
Not there yet, but we'll see. I hope so, is the short answer. All right. Thanks to Krasava, Leah, and Zaki for a great show. And I want to thank everyone who's watching at home. I'm your host, Russ Colchamiro, and I'll see you all next week. All right. Take care. Thanks a lot, folks. All right. Bye now.